Oh, it's a mega good news for the team. For sure, it's probably more responsibilities in the future and so, but at the end of the day, I think it's a very important step for us.
Now, if there is one guy who wouldn't be happy with Vasseur being appointed as the new team principal at Ferrari, it has to be Carlos Sainz. The Spaniard enjoyed a high level of democracy during the reign of Binotto, but it seems like that time is long gone in the past now. If Ferrari do hire Vasseur to replace Binotto, as every indication suggests will be the outcome of the main saga in Ferrari, Sainz will have a difficult time in the coming seasons. Charles Leclerc and Frederic Vasseur are close friends from Leclerc's days at Alfa Romeo, with Vasseur still being the team principal of Alfa when Leclerc debuted in Formula 1. It goes without saying that Frederic had a massive impact on the outcome of Leclerc's impressive rookie season, which saw him being promoted to Ferrari after just one full season in the sport. Now that Binotto is gone, it's obvious that Leclerc is going to push for the team to bring Vasseur in as the team principal. And while we think that this is going to be done just for the sake of the good old days, there might be some hidden narrative behind Leclerc wanting Vasseur to lead Ferrari from 2023 and beyond. One huge reason for that is the philosophy that Vasseur is going to implement within the team. Unlike Binotto, who didn't want to put one driver as the number one in the team and always pushed for fair and square racing, Vasseur believes in quite the opposite politics of how to lead a team. Both seasons that Sainz has driven for Ferrari, 2021 and 2022, have seen a very close competition between these two. On top of that, Sainz even beat Leclerc in the Drivers' Championship in 2021, and in 2022, he wasn't able to get off to a good start in the first couple of races and the first half of the season overall, hence the deficit to Leclerc. But Sainz has always proven himself as a driver who can make his own decisions and not rely too much on the team's strategies. That was seen in Monaco in Silverstone, with the second race seeing Sainz claim his first pole position and first win in his career. When the team told him not to fight Leclerc and instead defend against Perez and Hamilton, he immediately refused and went on to pass Leclerc owing to his fresher tyres. Nonetheless, it was Leclerc who was fighting for the championship, and although it was almost over after the first half of the season, the Monegasque was still well ahead of Sainz. This season, it became evident that Leclerc is the better driver, having 62 points more compared to Sainz, 2 more wins and 2 more podium finishes. That's a concerning sight for Sainz, and when the new team principal arrives, he will have a difficult time establishing himself as Ferrari's number one driver. Now, given the relationship between Vasseur and Leclerc's manager, Nicolas Tot, it's obvious that Leclerc would be the number one guy in the team if nothing strange happens at the beginning of the season. Obviously, if Sainz proves everyone wrong and starts to have dominant performances weekend after weekend, then this decision would be widely discussed and overlooked. It's not a secret that Ferrari has a strong pairing of drivers, and as of now, it's probably the only team that hasn't had a dominant number one driver throughout their common tenure. According to La Gazzetta dello Sport, the arrival of Vasseur can only mean bad things for the Spaniard, with the newsletter furthermore talking about Leclerc having the number one role in the team, adding, "It's hard to imagine him, Leclerc, being capable of that, let alone having that power, but inside the gentleman that Leclerc is, lurks sky-high ambitions. It's a risky hypothesis." On the other hand, the newspaper wrote about the relationship that is currently ongoing between Vasseur and Leclerc's manager, Nicolas Tot, adding, "Between them, there have been discussions at times, but that bond is strong. Just recently, Vasseur indicated that his career would have looked very different without Tot." Even with Binotto ahead, we've seen that Sainz has been given team orders when Leclerc was supposed to be prioritised, and this is something that every team on the grid would do if they had the opportunity presented to them. However, Ferrari is a top-performing team, and the difference in pure performance between Sainz and Leclerc isn't as high as one would think, so Leclerc would be nominated for the number one role in the team. After all, the Spaniard has much more experience than Leclerc, having debuted in 2015, 3 years prior to Leclerc's arrival in the sport, and Sainz has had a pivotal role in McLaren's P3 finish in 2020 in the Constructors' Championship, something that shouldn't be forgotten. Still, Vasseur said earlier on one occasion that every successful team is built around a reference driver, as he gave the comparison with Schumacher and Ferrari, Alonso with Renault, Red Bull with Vettel, and Mercedes with Hamilton. Obviously, he does hold a valid point, and there can only be one champion, not two. When teammates compete for the championship, such as between Mercedes drivers in 2016, there is a lot of negative chemistry between all of the team members, and it always ends with someone being let go of the team. But Vasseur cannot hope that Sainz will accept the number 2 card as easily as he's going to be dealt it, and it's not like Sainz is well past his prime so that nothing matters anymore to him. Sainz does have a lot to prove to the F1 world, and if there is one team that can offer him the right opportunity, that has to be Ferrari and their current machinery. That's something that La Gazzetta dello Sport also wrote about, adding, "It'll be interesting to see how Carlos Sainz will react to this. After all, he arrived in Maranello under the assumption that he could compete with Leclerc, something he's been able to do so far and has shown he's capable of doing so. But let's say that Vasseur does come to Ferrari at the beginning of the 2023 season, something that's been reported by almost every media outlet out there, and he does plan to appoint Leclerc as the number 1 driver and Sainz as the number 2 driver. What is the future outcome for the Spaniard? Obviously, he would look for a way out of the team, and the first position that is going to be open for him is Audi in 2026. This is a team that his father competes for in rallying, and obviously he would have a word with the owner when it comes to his son receiving a seat in the team where he's desperate to prove he can be the number 1 driver. If the new team boss is clearly going to choose one driver, we can already imagine that Sainz is going to bet on the future at Audi, the same brand his father in rallying competes for, said Corriere dello Sport. What doesn't go in Sainz's favour is the fact that the rumours about Vasseur joining Ferrari have become more than rumours. For example, Vasseur has already bought a house in Maranello, and recent reports say that he's already moved in after verbally agreeing on the working terms with Ferrari. According to motorsport.com, Vasseur is already living and is located in Maranello, which means that, apart from Ferrari, Alfa Romeo are going to have to look for a new leader in the upcoming period. It's not a good period for Sauber either, with their principal reportedly leaving for Ferrari and the commercial partner Alfa Romeo already cutting ties with Sauber at the end of the 2026 season. It could mean that a storm is coming, but it could also mean that Sauber will have a much more successful period ahead of them now that Audi has joined the sport and they want to prove to the world that they can be competitive in this championship as well. As for Sainz, the Spaniard has already stated that he had a difficult time adjusting to Ferrari and all of the struggles and difficulties that he encountered, so the arrival of Vasseur is by far welcome news for him. Obviously, the team could go in the right direction, and if Leclerc gets prioritised for the number 1 spot, we could see more competitive races by the Monegasque and Maranello squad. But this competitiveness always comes at the expense of a second driver being thrown on the fire as a sacrificial lamb, something that Sainz hasn't signed up for in his tenure with Ferrari. With that being said, we're going to have an interesting period ahead of us when it comes to Ferrari and their driver lineup. Few of us expected Ferrari to have issues with Sainz leaving the team, but if Vasseur's philosophy is implemented, Sainz will be unhappy in Ferrari. So, what do you think will happen next with the smooth operator? Let us know in the comments down below.